This episode is going to be very different. My husband and I were on the tube. We were discussing how AI is taking over so much and what is it that's going to differentiate us. We landed on taste. We had a bit of a dispute over what taste meant, which took me down a rabbit hole of me buying some books. If you've done art history, you will have come across David Hume, the works of Kant, and you would have studied the theory of aesthetics. You would have gone through that bit to understand what taste actually means and how judgment and refinement and sentiment all comes into play. Now, if you haven't studied that, you would have gone down the rabbit hole that I did, which made you buy the books. I went on YouTube. I went and used AI. So Perplexity was the main one to get the sources of what I wanted to learn. Then I bought the books. And then I used ChatGPT and, of course, Claude to just kind of refine some of my thoughts, where I then had a bit of a debate. And the thing that I want to share with you today is not my view, but actually the ChatGPT chat I ended up having. So I invited 4 experts into the room, and I hope I can maintain the different voices. If you happen to be open to watching this on video, I would actually turn on the video if you're on Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, great, you're already here. But I will do my best to make this work for voice only or audio only. Okay, so without much further ado, let me introduce to you the expert panel we've gathered together here. And let's start with David Hume. Born 1711, the Scottish philosopher who wrote of the standard of taste, arguing that beauty isn't in the eye, but in the cultivated mind. Pierre Bourdieu, sociologist born in 1930, author of Distinction, who exposed taste as cultural currency, a mirror of class disguised as personal preference. And then we have Susan Sontag, born 1933, the critic behind Notes on Camp, who made aesthetics intellectual and made intellect aesthetic, always watching for meaning in what others dismissed. And then the American in the room, David Hickey, art critic born 1938, best known for air guitar, who made beauty dangerous again and called taste what it really is, a personal rebellion. Welcome, welcome. Allow me to set the scene. The room is dimly lit, wood-paneled walls, a long table, and 4 distinct figures seated around it. Pierre Bourdieu sits stiffly, notebook in hand. David Hume swirls a glass of wine, amused, and Susan Sontag leans back, cigarette between her fingers, unreadable. David Hickey slouches, arms crossed, already half annoyed. And then there's me. And I ask the question, what determines good taste? Gentlemen and lady taste, while beginning in sentiment, is refined through experience. Some judgments are better because they arise from cultivated faculties. The true critic is not born, but made. Good taste requires delicacy, practice, comparison, and a freedom from prejudice. Bourdieu, very curtly. With all due respect, David, you confuse privilege with refinement. Your so-called true critic is a social construction, bourgeois, educated, and trained to reproduce dominant cultural values. Taste is never neutral. It's a weapon. It distinguishes the upper classes from the rest and naturalizes inequality through cultural legitimacy. So, no one can make better judgment than another? Must we reduce all discernment to power play? You flatten the world, sir. I grant that biases exist, but some individuals genuinely perceive more finely, not because of class, but because of exposure and discipline. Sontag. You're both assuming taste has to be serious or even sincere. What you're calling good taste, I see as performance. Sometimes the smartest aesthetic gesture is to deliberately embrace what's excessive, theatrical, bad. Camp is taste. Irony is taste. The knowing wink can mean more than solemn judgment or bourgeois posturing. Christ, you're all missing the point. Taste is about pleasure, not status, not irony. Not some enlightenment self-improvement project. People love what moves them. A gorgeous painting, a pop song, a drag show. If it hits you in the gut, that's real. What killed art wasn't low culture. It was people like you, academics, philosophers, telling us what counts. Ugh. And you think you're not a snob? You valorize pleasure, but ignore the machinery that defines what's pleasurable in the first place? The market, the media, the institutions of cultural production, they all shape what people like. You're just replacing one elite with another. No, I'm saying let people decide. You want to theorize them into paralysis? Art needs air. It needs desire. A little vulgarity, something that makes your heart beat faster, not footnotes and not frameworks. Really, Hickey? Desire without discipline is chaos. If all taste is gut response, why do we still read Shakespeare and not pamphlets? Speak for yourself. I collect pamphlets. Exactly. That's real. That's culture breathing. Let's pause here. You talked about Shakespeare over pamphlets. Is it because he's a good storyteller? Is there a level of taste here? But sometimes you also say that you read pamphlets over Shakespeare. How does this relate to taste? Sontag leans forward slightly, smoke curling from the tip of a cigarette. I never said I prefer pamphlets to Shakespeare. I said I collect them. That's the difference. Shakespeare has endured, yes, he's powerful, but pamphlets, those ephemeral, disposable, low objects, they reveal something raw, something unpolished. They're artifacts of taste in motion, not taste canonized. Taste isn't just about choosing the best according to the inherited standard. It's about noticing what others ignore. It's about cultivating the ability to see, especially what culture throws away. That's why I care about pamphlets or drag or pulp cinema. Not because they're better, but because they complicate the idea of better. But surely, Susan, if you make no distinction, if the pamphlet and the play are equally valuable, you evacuate the very concept of taste. Isn't the whole point to discern quality? I do make distinctions, David, but I resist pretending those distinctions are natural or universal. Taste isn't often a mask for hierarchy. I choose to explore what the mask hides. Sometimes I read Shakespeare, other times I read pamphlets with religious paranoia and bad typesetting. Both reveal something essential, one about craft, the other about culture. Both demand a kind of attention that, to me, is taste. See, I can actually ride with that, Susan, because you're talking about attention. That's what I'm talking about when I say desire. It's what keeps your eyes on the canvas, your ears on the song. If a pamphlet grabs you, that's real. Doesn't matter if it's high or low. What I can't stand is taste as virtue signaling. Look at me, refined sensibilities. No thanks. I want to be rocked, not groomed. And yet, David, even your rebellion becomes its own taste culture. Your love of being rocked becomes new distinction. Those in the know versus the boring academic crowd. You're not escaping the game. You're just playing it with the louder music. All right, my friends, it's clear that we're not going to be able to agree on anything here, so let me put another dimension into this. We're in 2025. I know you're all historical beings, so pretend you're living in the 2025 era, where AI is rife and we're able to create what is the relevance of taste in the day of AI, in the age of AI. The room shifts. The panel flickers, now glowing faintly with screens in their eyes. Projections hovering over the table. They are no longer speaking from the past. They are here now. It is 2025. Hume, blinking at a projected image of an AI-generated painting. Taste in the age of AI becomes more relevant, not less. Machines may imitate style, they may mimic form, but they cannot refine sentiment. They do not feel, they do not judge, they do not experience delicacy or develop discernment through lived experience. So now, in a world of infinite output, the human judge becomes more precious. The trained reflective mind, one who can say not just what looks good, but what matters, is more essential than ever. Bourdieu tapping a digital map of taste clusters across social networks. That's naive. AI doesn't destroy taste. It amplifies the machinery that has always shaped it. Algorithmic feedback loops, platforms, incentives, data capitalism. Now more than ever, taste is manufactured. optimized for engagement, fed to audiences in echo chambers, weaponized to sort people into consumer identities. AI doesn't erode taste. It automates the reproduction of power. The cultural capital class trains the machines, and the machines reinforce the hierarchy. You want to see who has taste in 2025? Look at who trained the model. Sontag, watching an AI-generated fashion campaign glitch slightly. You're both missing the sensuality of the moment. In 2025, AI overwhelms us with simulations, perfect, polished, inhumanely correct. Taste becomes a radical act of curation, of choosing imperfection, of noticing the glitch, the asymmetry, the accident, of resisting frictionless aesthetics. Camp becomes resistance again. Taste today might mean embracing the almost good, the uncanny, the not quite right that reveals the human underneath the machine. Hickey, looking half inspired, half pissed. Here's the truth. AI can do everything except want something. Taste in 2025 is about desire, real desire, the irrational, embarrassing, personal stuff that can't be faked, and it sure as hell can't be predicted by a model. Let the machines generate whatever. What people will cling to, what they'll fight for, is what feels real. This is a signal of life in a synthetic world. And yeah, some of it will be messy, vulgar, contradictory. That's the point. So to each of you, if AI can create, refine, remix, and scale aesthetic output, what becomes of the role of the tastemaker in this new age? Hume says, to uphold judgment, to guide the flood toward meaning. How about you, Bourdieu? To interrogate the system, to reveal who benefits. What about you, Sontag? To feel deeply and point to what others overlook. Hickey, how about you? To want boldly and not apologize for it. The room quiets. The digital wind of generated content hums outside. Bodhi, you mentioned that AI doesn't destroy taste. It amplifies the machinery that has always shaped it. You talk about the algorithms, feedback loops, platform incentives, data capitalism. Can you please elaborate what you actually mean by that and how taste is manufactured to optimize engagement? Elaborate a little bit, and then you can all have a discussion on whether you agree with him or not. Bourdieu, now casually referred to as Bodhi by the others, leans in. His projected interface lights up with charts of platform behavior, influencer economies, and engagement metrics. Certainly. When I say taste is manufactured, I mean it in the most material sense. In 2025, cultural preferences are formed in salons and study halls. They're shaped by platform architecture, by the algorithmic decisions of TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. These platforms decide what is seen, how often, and by whom. And they're not neutral. They optimize for engagement, which means what gets clicks, what sparks comments, what can be monetized, what confirms existing beliefs or biases. So when a person says, I just like this kind of content, they're often responding to what they've been trained to see over and over by a system that selects for virality, not value. Taste then becomes a loop, not a choice, a product of exposure, not a reflection of power, not perception. The dominant class now programs the algorithms through their control of media, capital, and culture. AI trained on biased data and commercial goals doesn't just imitate human taste, it codifies it, repackages it, and sells it back to us under the illusion of spontaneity. This is not refinement, it's repetition, and it serves the few. Hume, clearly perturbed. But then are we to throw up our hands and declare all judgment meaningless? That the individual cannot form an authentic response because they've been programmed? That's intellectual fatalism. Certainly, manipulation exists, but so does agency. People are not mere machines. They can be awakened to finer things, taught to see beyond the trending and the viral. You confuse possibility with probability. Yes, some transcend it, but most do not. And those who do tend to already have cultural capital, the means, education, and time to reflect and resist, the illusion of meritocratic taste is just that, an illusion. Sontag, soft but cutting. I think you're both missing something. Even in a world of algorithmic saturation, people don't just passively consume, they appropriate, they remix, they layer irony on irony, they find ways to turn the system against itself. Camp was born from a lack of access. So is meme culture. So are fan edits, stan accounts, niche aesthetics. Taste in 2025 is also subcultural warfare. You say taste is manipulated, Bodhi, but you're ignoring the friction. People know they're being manipulated, and they play with it anyway. Ha ha ha! Let's be real, all this talk of capital and structure is elegant, sure, but people still fall in love with songs. They still get goosebumps when trailer just hits the right point. You can't algorithm your way into affect. Bodhi is right about the machinery, but the machinery keeps glitching. People love what they shouldn't. A dumb pop song, a quiet poem, a low-budget horror flick. Taste survives in spite of the system, not because of it. So, where shall we press on next? Who's being too idealistic? Who's being too cynical? Well, let's talk about the designers of the world who are being replaced currently by AI and who worry about the future of the businesses. I'm not talking about the people who are in employment. I'm talking about the people who are business owners who are currently being replaced by AI. I want you to talk to me about the future of the designers. Does taste play a role in here? Is that a differentiator? I'm talking about good, talented designers who know how to solve problems and they produce identity systems and brands. What is the future looking like right now in the space of AI? The room shifts again, a table strewn with design briefs, AI mockups, logo generators, brand style guides. The air feels tighter now. Real stakes, real tension. The question lands heavily. What is the future of designers who are business owners being replaced by AI? And where does taste sit in all of this? Sontag, lighting a fresh cigarette with an AI-branded matchbook. Designers who built their value on output alone, on delivering something visually pleasing, fast, clean, and marketable, are already seeing their edge erode. But those who built their practice around discernment, taste, context, cultural fluency, they're harder to replace. Taste isn't just a style, it's a worldview. It's knowing what not to do, when not to say it, how to subvert expectations without losing clarity. AI can produce, it cannot hesitate. That hesitation, that edit, that is where taste lives. So yes, some designers are being replaced, but many were already designing by formula, and formula is always first to go. Designers who've been delivering templates with fancy talk, they're done, finished. But those who understand that design is seduction, those who get to make people feel something, want something, remember something, those people still win. AI doesn't have desire. It doesn't chase a feeling. It doesn't know how to say, this isn't right yet, but you'll know it when I see it. If you're a designer who knows how to make a brand stick in the bloodstream, then your taste is your moat, and you'll go one further. Bad taste with guts will beat polished AI outputs any day because people are starving for realness, and AI is all sheen, no soul. Hume, steepling fingers thoughtfully. If I may refine that, AI can mimic outputs, but it cannot mimic judgment, not the kind formed through human experience, cultural fluency, and moral imagination. The designer's future then lies not in competing with the machine on speed or volume, but in becoming a custodian of meaning. A great brand designer isn't just arranging shapes. They are embedding values, encoding signals, making cultural claims that requires a standards of taste, an ability to judge what belongs and what does not, what elevates and what diminishes. Designers who treat their work as aesthetic curation, grounded in human understanding, while of course solving a problem, not decoration, will remain irreplaceable. Bourdieu, eyes narrowing as he swipes through AI-generated logos. Let's not get romantic. The problem isn't that AI is replacing designers. The problem is that the market has reduced design to deliverables. The client no longer buys taste. They buy throughput, brand systems as fast fashion, identity as subscription, and AI is simply feeding that machine. You want to protect designers, then you must redefine what they're selling. They're not vendors of logos. They are architects of perception, strategists of symbolism. If they don't claim that role, AI will take everything else. But don't pretend taste alone will save them unless they can frame their taste as value to those in power. So are we saying designers must evolve from makers to interpreters of meaning? Are we saying that taste is a last human skill AI can simulate with confidence? Or are we saying designers need to rebuild their positioning to make their taste legible, defendable, and indispensable? Designers that I know who are successful and they understand that they're not just delivering on aesthetics, but solving problems and are outcome focused and they're impact focused. They already are using strategy and thinking in all of this. Are we saying that they too need to rebuild their positioning to make their taste legible, defendable, and indispensable? Or are we saying that taste is a lost human skill AI can't simulate with confidence? Where are we with the designers? Some of you take the view that the designers are just producing outputs, and yes, there are those designers, but the majority of the designers are strategic thinkers and aren't doing that. So can you all speak to that? The panel shifts in their seats. The tone changes now. This isn't about dismissing designers. It's about grappling with the fate of those who are already doing it right. The ones who think, who listen, who design with purpose. The ones Ivy's talking about. Hume, leaning in, genuinely engaged. I hear you, Ivy. You're describing what I would call the true practitioners of the craft. If these designers already understand their role as interpreters of meaning, if they approach their work with delicacy of judgment, with taste, not just in surface, but in sense, then no, they do not need to rebuild their positioning. They need to reaffirm it. But they must make it visible. In a world where AI mimics the output of deep thinking, showing the thinking becomes the differentiator, not hiding the wizard behind the curtain, but inviting the client behind it. Taste, in this case, is not a lost skill. It's a quiet skill and must speak louder. Bourdieu, measured but pointed. That's precisely the danger. The designers you're defending may be thoughtful, strategic, and taste-led, but that won't matter. If they've seen the market as interchangeable with tools, taste is not enough unless it is positioned as capital, strategic capital, social capital, symbolic capital. If they are already strategic thinkers, then yes, they must still reposition themselves, not in the process, but how the process is valued. The problem is not the designer, it's the economy that reduces design to speed, scale, and style. To survive it, they must stop being humble about their judgment and start asserting its cost. Sontag, speaking slowly, precisely. What Ivy's describing are designers who already possess aesthetic intelligence, which is rarer than it sounds. The question is not whether they have it, it's whether they're performing it as a visible part of their practice. Because taste is increasingly illegible in a world of hyper-production. Everything looks good now. Everything is technically competent. The only way to stand out is to make your sensibility felt in how you speak, what you reference, what you refuse to design. In that sense, the designer must become more like an artist-critic hybrid. Their taste isn't just part of their process. It becomes their stance, their point of view. Hickey, casual, but dead serious. Let's call it straight. Most of the designers you're talking about, they do have taste. They do have brains. But they've been trained to undersell themselves. They solve great problems. Real problems, yeah, but they hide their voice behind the deliverables and decks, and AI doesn't care about your deck. So no, they don't need to rebuild their business. They need to reclaim their swagger. Taste is only power when it's claimed as power. When you say, no, we're not doing that trend. When you say, this just won't work, it will last. When you stop asking for the permission to lead. Designers who already think like strategists now need to own their cultural authority, because that's the one thing AI will never do. So, Ivy, the answer seems to be no, your designers don't need to rebuild their offering. But yes, they need to raise their visibility of their taste, reassert their stance, and demand recognition for the judgment they already wield. Would you like them to debate how a designer can make their taste legible in a way that market values? Or take this further into how AI might force a new kind of aesthetic leadership? Well, I suppose the final question is, when it comes to AI and design, what is the differentiator? What is going to make them stand out and be different and not be replaced by AI? Can you speak to that? The room quietens again. Each thinker knows this is a sharp edge of the conversation. Ivy's asking not for theory, but for a clear line in the sand. If AI can design, then what makes a human design matter? What exactly makes taste the differentiator, if it is one? Hume, firm, no longer indulgent. What differentiates the human designer in the age of AI is judgment in context. AI can execute design within a style. It can remix aesthetics, generate logos, simulate mood boards, but it cannot understand meaning in time and place. A designer with taste does not just know what looks good, they know what is appropriate, what is resonant, what is timely. This sense when a brand must be bold versus restrained, nostalgic versus futuristic, not because of data, but because of cultural attunement. Taste is the human's compass in an ocean of endless, soulless options. It allows them to say, this is the one, and justify it with something deeper than pattern recognition. Bourdieu, clinically. Hume is right, but not incomplete. Taste alone is not the differentiator. The differentiator is a claim to authority rooted in taste. Designers must position themselves as interpreters of culture, not stylists of it. The ones who last will not be those with a great eye, but those who can say, this is why it matters. This is who it will resonate with. This is how it positions your brand socially. AI cannot argue for its choices. It cannot speak to intent. Designers can. The differentiator is not taste. It's legible, assertive, taste-framed as strategy. Sontag. Quiet. Again. And cutting. I'll take it further. AI may eventually learn to mimic taste, but can it replicate aesthetic courage? It won't design something uncomfortable but right. It won't refuse a client's bad brief because the idea is vulgar or banal. It won't create tension on purpose. Real taste is often about what you reject. It's about limitation, restraint, selective obsession. AI produces what's probable. Designers with taste produce what's necessary. Sometimes, despite the brief, and sometimes, despite the trend. That is a difference. Hickey, leaning forward now, voice low. Taste is the last place where instinct and identity meet. AI can fake style. It can generate infinite options, but it can't stake its name on one. A human with taste says, this is me. This solution reflects what I believe good looks like. This design carries my voice, my scars, my bets. And that bet, that moment of personal risk, is what makes the work powerful. AI doesn't take risks. Designers do. That's the damn difference. So, the consensus. Taste is not just aesthetic preference. It's contextual judgment, cultural authorship, and emotional risk. And the human risk, the ability to choose with conviction on the face of infinite options, is what makes designers irreplaceable. So, if we drop the AI and we go back to our normal worlds, what's your consensus on taste? Can you, if you would put any one consensus, what would that be? I want you to argue it out and come to some sort of consensus. The digital haze fades, the flickering screens dim. The room returns to its wooden, paneled stillness. The thinkers, Sontag, Hume, Hickey, Bourdieu, look across the table. Ivy has asked for the impossible, one consensus on taste, and yet they try. Hume measured, taste is the ability to make reasoned aesthetic judgments that resonate beyond the self. It is not random preference, it is cultivated, tested, and expressed with discernment. Bourdieu immediately. No, taste is structured. It reflects one's class, education, exposure. Even your most personal choices are shaped by what society made available and valuable to you. Sontag interrupts. You're both clinging to old binaries. Taste is neither purely rational nor purely conditioned. It is sensibility in action, a way of noticing, framing, and revealing meaning. Something through sincerity, sometimes through irony, but always through intention. God, enough with the sociology. Here's the truth. Taste is what you're willing to stand for. It's not what you like. It's what you defend. You show me that someone refuses to compromise on, and I'll show you their taste. A pause for once. Silence. Then Sontag nods, slowly. Then Hume. Even Bourdieu leans back, thinking. Final consensus, spoken by all. Taste is a human act of choosing, deliberately, publicly, and with risk, what you believe deserves to exist. Consensus reached. But I'm not happy about that, right? So I want to ask the room to elaborate on this final consensus. Taste is the human act of choosing. So you're creating a judgment, or you're taking a stand, or you're doing it on purpose. Why does it have to be in public? Why does it have to be with risk? Why do you say that? What you believe deserves to exist, really subjective. Please elaborate. The panel straightens. The room stills again. Ivy has put her finger on the pulse. The line they all agreed to, taste is a human act of choosing deliberately, publicly, and with risk. What you believe deserves to exist needs unpacking. They each lean in, compelled to defend and deepen the meaning. Hume, speaking first. Yes, taste is judgment, not a reflex. It involves evaluating not just what pleases you, but why it does. It's the deliberate part. Now, why public? Because taste only becomes meaningful when it enters the world, when it confronts others, invites agreement or disagreement, and seeks to resonate beyond the self. Judgment in isolation is sentiment. Taste is shared judgment. And risk, because to stand for something aesthetically is to expose your values, to say this is good, this is right, this is beautiful, that's not safe. It opens you to critique, misinterpretation, rejection, but without that risk, taste is hollow. Safe taste is decoration. Real taste is vulnerable. Bourdieu, picking up more analytic. Let's be clear. Risk also signals status. When you take a stand on taste, you're implicitly saying, I have the authority to judge. That claim, and it is a claim, is what makes taste political. Publicness is not just exposure. It's participation in a symbolic struggle. Taste distinguishes, it says, I belong to this cultural group, not that one. Now, Ivy, you asked why what you believe deserves to exist sounds subjective. It is subjective, but it's not random. Taste reveals your structure of value. Your aesthetics are your ethics, masked. What you elevate reflects what you want the world to be filled with. So taste is subjective, but it is also strategic. It's an act of world building. Sontag, quiet and elegant. Taste is always a statement of desire. It's what you give attention to, what you preserve, what you frame. When I say this deserves to exist, I don't mean it objectively. I mean, I will defend this fragment of experience, this form, this expression against the void. The publicness of taste matters because culture is conversation. If you're not visible in that conversation, you're not participating, you're consuming. And risk? Without risk, you're just echoing taste, not forming it. Real taste requires exposure, even embarrassment, especially doubt. Hickey, leaning forward, blunt. Here's the deal. Taste without risk is cowardice. You're just cosplaying discernment. And public? Hell yes. Because until you put yourself out there building a brand, a film, a sentence, you haven't chosen. You just thought about it. And yeah, it's subjective. But it's subjective with skin in the game. When I say this is beautiful, I'm staking my identity on it. That's what makes it real. That's what separates it from the feed. All right. We'll come out of this whole role play for a second. That was a little bit more difficult than I expected it to be. I'm absolutely exhausted. I thought this was really interesting because as I was wanting to understand a little bit more deeper how taste was experienced through different, this is when I put all of these 4 people in the room and I wanted them to have a conversation and I wanted to ask questions. And it's very clear that there are different opinions on on what taste is, how it's cultivated, and what it means. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter which one is important. Some sort of consensus has been agreed. What is important is that there are perspectives in the world. What is your perspective? I want you to think about what taste means to you and how you perceive it. In recent times, I've had several debates with people on the matter of taste, and it gets really heated. People think that you can't make design decision based on taste, and absolutely, there is no one saying that design decisions need to be made on the basis of taste, but we're looking for differentiators. Design decisions can be made that solve problems using AI. AI is good enough at this stage to produce those solutions to problematic scenarios. So what part of the creative process is still belonging to the designer or to the creative? That's where taste comes in. It's a world that is generating so much content right now. And I don't mean social media content. I just mean it's producing writing, art, music, lots of different things, basically content. And as so much is being produced, it is difficult to determine what good taste will be, because as more and more is being produced, we're going to be in a situation where maybe it is almost the Bourdieu's angle, where culture is determining what is good and what is bad. Our collective consensus of good taste could decrease if we do not ensure that we keep our good taste practiced, so that we can continue to be discerning in our choices. We can continue to be discerning in how we produce. So I'll take a very concrete example. I have used AI to produce scripts, and I've been too tired to actually write them myself. And I just showed one to my husband, Darren, and he's like, I don't know what this is. There's just lots of words. And I'm not great at script writing. I'm like, and I fill in the blanks because I know what this is, what the purpose is. I know what it's teaching. I know what it means. So for me, it all makes sense. But for him, when he's taking an outside perspective, he could see all the gaps. Now, that's discernment right there. That's showing that someone with taste who actually knows how to write scripts can see the holes in the AI creation. I do not write scripts. I do not have the art of writing scripts. I do other things that I'm better at, but I couldn't catch it. This is where taste will matter, because the script is strategically correct, but it does not have the detail that is required for it to be effective. And that would be a matter of taste. I hope this was useful. I hope you found it fun. And I hope my voices were consistent. Let me know what you thought of this. I really enjoyed reading this part, so I'm also going to include the chat transcript so you can maybe even follow along as reading. Thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow and subscribe and leave a comment and a review. It really does help the show get more traction. Thank you.